Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, Anthony Edwards' progression last year, just how much better he was as a sophomore than he was as a rookie, and also just how much are the Wolves going to be relying on Anthony Edwards this season defensively, why it's one of the keys to the Timberwolves' entire season. It's upcoming on the show today. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I am the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, you can find this show anywhere. It's free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken. And that's 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Today on the show, I want to spend really the whole show talking about Anthony Edwards and some of it in the context of his improvement offensively from his rookie season to his sophomore season. And then I also want to talk about the reliance that the Wolves are going to have this year based on the way they've built the roster on Anthony Edwards defensively. And obviously that's part of his improvement, a big part of it from rookie to sophomore season in the NBA. But why it's so vital that he has a good defensive season. So we're going to break all that down here today. Let's go ahead and jump in. I started to kind of tease this topic a little bit on Thursday's show when I was talking about catch and shoot players for the Wolves and players who were good catch and shoot 3-point shooters last year for the Wolves, players who weren't. Adding Bryn Forbes is going to be a huge uplift in that area. Austin Rivers is a solid catch and shoot 3-point shooter. So I started to talk a little bit about Ant's shooting percentages. And I did a bit more digging into everything that he did this past season and compared that to his rookie year. And so I want to start there. First of all, I think it's super important to point out that Anthony Edwards was better from a shooting percentage perspective from every single zone on the floor last year than he was as a rookie, which is fairly rare. I mean, it's easy to just look at the numbers, and raw field goal percentage is a pretty lazy way to look at offensive efficiency, obviously, because, anything that's going to show you of a 3-pointer versus a 2-pointer is a better way to do that. So even just look at a 2-point percentage and 3-point percentage is better. You can look at effective field goal percentage. True shooting percentage does a good job at encompassing overall offensive efficiency. But if you dig into each zone on the floor, I think field goal percentage obviously becomes a little bit more valuable as you measure a player's success. And so just using Basketball Reference for these zones, I mean, obviously NBA.com, you can still find it's a little trickier than it used to be, but the actual red, yellow, green zones there on their stats tool. But on Basketball Reference, they break it down in a chart, obviously by distance, 0 to 3 feet, 3 to 10 feet, 10 to 16 feet, and 16 feet out to the 3-point line. In every single one of those zones, Anthony Edwards improved his field goal percentage from year 1 to year 2. He shot 1.1% better at the rim as a sophomore than he did as a rookie. He shot 3.8% better from 3 to 10 feet. He shot 9.8% better from 10 to 16 feet, which is phenomenal. And he was nearly 8% better from 16 feet to the 3-point line, and his 3-point percentage is well documented. He's up 2.8% from rookie to sophomore year from beyond the arc. But that mid-range, and no, it's not a big chunk of shots for him. I mean, you look at the percentage of his shots he's actually taking from the mid-range, it's a very small percentage, thankfully. Last year, it was about almost 11% of his shot attempts came from 10 feet to the 3-point line, which is, you shouldn't be, like, that's good, right? Jalen Wells can shoot from there. D'Angelo Russell shoots from there. We don't need Ant shooting from there. But it's helpful that he has it in his game. It's helpful that he's able to do it. And he improved by basically 10 percentage points from year 1 to year 2, from 10 feet to the 3-point line. The improvement at the rim was only slight, but I think it would have been greater, except for he had that kind of swoon in February and March. Remember, he had the ankle issue right before the All-Star break. He had a couple of really rough games. The knee was bothering him, and we saw him at the rim. There were a couple of games where that was one of my key takeaways from the game was Ant just missed a lot at the rim, and he didn't look explosive. Or I shouldn't say that. He didn't look as explosive as he can, and he wasn't dunking over guys. He was kind of shying away from contact a little bit, not finishing through it when he got it. And of course, we all know he still doesn't get the All-Star whistle. Perhaps that'll change if he makes the All-Star team this year. Because, by the way, the free throw rate was exactly the same. So the free throw rate staying the same and the percentage at the rim only improving by 1.1%. It's actually a little bit surprising that he improved as much across the board in terms of efficiency as he did, because the at the rim numbers aren't that much better than they were as a rookie. Still, they improved. He was good at the rim. He was also very good in the paint from 3 to 10 feet. He was up 4.8%, which is significant. And shooting just a hair under 36% from 3 to 10 feet isn't bad. Obviously, you're going to be in traffic there. You're going to get your shots contested a lot more. You're trying to play through contact, again, whistles that he doesn't usually get. And he was really good in the paint. I think it's important to note that he improved both outside the arc and in the paint. And from that 3 to 10 foot range is super important. And then also from outside the arc, we already talked about this, but the 3-point rate went up. Let's see, how much did it go up by? It went up from, so as a rookie, basically 43% of his shot attempts were threes. Last season, 48.4%. So that went up 5.5% more of his shots in terms of shot selection and shot, I guess, allocation came from outside the arc. And he was more effective from outside there, an improvement of 2.8% from outside the arc. So from every single zone on the floor, Anthony Edwards improved his shooting percentage. And of course, that's going to lead to a greater scoring average as well. It's also important to note his usage rate was actually down last year as a rookie, not by a lot, by 0.6%, but he actually had a higher usage rate as a rookie than he did last season. Part of that was Karl-Anthony Towns was more healthy. And I just think in general, the offense was a lot smoother under Chris Finch. And of course, he wasn't a rookie, so the assist rate was up, and we'll talk about that in a second. But interesting to me that all these percentages are up. The scoring average is up. The 3-point rate is up. The free throw rate is flat, but the usage rate ticks down slightly. And that's all good. Those are all good signs for Anthony Edwards. Okay, next I want to talk about a few more categories where he improved, and then I want to get into defense, talk about Ant's defense in the context of the team as well. So we're going to do that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. By the way, we're going to talk win totals quite a bit as we get into probably September. I want to wait until we really know how things shake out. But the early win total number, if you're looking to get on this early, BetOnline right now is 48 for the Timberwolves, and that seems a little low to me. I feel like it's going to end in the 49 to 50 range. Of course, it's going to depend on where Kevin Durant ends up and several other factors. But if you're interested in jumping on that win total, I mean, 48 feels a little low for me for the Wolves in terms of an over/under. So go check that out at BetOnline.net. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts and more, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? NFL camps kick off this week, and also this week, Locked On NFL is giving you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL based on what the odds makers are saying at BetOnline. Available all week long at Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Go check it out. All right, let's talk some more Ant here. Quickly, I wanted to just kind of run through the rate-based stats to just underscore how much that Ant really improved in all facets, and then we'll transition to talking about the defense here in a minute. Well, actually, first, before we get to that, just to put a bow in the shooting numbers, there's one more thing I wanted to point out. Anthony Edwards, in terms of not just spot on the floor, but also shot type. If you go to NBA.com and you're looking at shooting efficiency And I guess it is under shooting efficiency under player tracking at NBA.com /stats. We talked a little bit about catch and shoot numbers on Thursday's show, but Ant's numbers for both driving and catch and shoot are fantastic. The pull-up numbers are not as good. So for some context, this season, Anthony Edwards shot 41.7% on catch and shoot field goals overall. That's not just threes. That's all field goals, although most of them are threes. So best on the team, 1.3 points better than Karl-Anthony Towns, nearly 3 points better than Jalen Wells. Malik Beasley was 38.3% on catch and shoot. Anthony Edwards was 41.7. That's way up from where he was as a rookie. As a rookie, Anthony Edwards' catch and shoot was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was 10th on the team, 32.5% on catch and shoot threes. 32.5%. He made an almost 10-point jump to 41.7% last season. That is massive. And if you could choose one single place that he's improved the most, it's probably there. And it was about an extra point per game in terms of they actually isolate catch and shoot points per game on NBA.com. And his scoring average jumped by 2 points per game, rookie to sophomore year. And half of that was catch and shoot situations, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of the season, that's a lot. A point per game on catch and shoot opportunities. That's huge. Also, drive field goal percentage and his number of drive points per game. He shot 50% on drives, which actually was below. It was below D'Angelo Russell. It was below Jaden McDaniels. That field goal percentage needs to improve. I talked about his improvement at the rim and also out to 10 feet in the paint. It improved. It's got to be better. So that's another area for improvement for him. One place he could definitely stand to either improve, or clearly he focused on catch and shoot improvement in the offseason last summer. To go up nearly 10 points in that category is just crazy. It obviously was a focus. I don't know about pull-up jumpers, if that's going to be a focus of his, or if he simply just takes less of them and just gets downhill and drives down people's throat, getting into the paint. Because Ant last season was 11th on the Timberwolves in pull-up field goal percentage, 32.9% on pull-up field goals. Now, he scored 6.1 points per game, which is the same as D'Angelo Russell did, because Ant loves to shoot the pull-up transition three. So does D'Lo. D'Lo was more effective. D'Lo was about 36% on pull-up field goals. Ant was 33%. But in general, that's not a very efficient shot. But I mean, Jalen Wells 45% on pull-up jumpers, right? You want Jalen Wells stepping into a pull-up three more than you want Ant doing it, and significantly so. He was 12 points better, 12.3 points to be exact, better than Anthony Edwards on pull-up field goals. So Ant needs to reduce those pull-up field goals a little, or if he wants to have a 10-point jump this year in that, like he did last year in catch and shooting, fine. I mean, like, that would be best. Or he could just take less of them, take more catch and shoot threes and get to the rim more often, improve at the rim, draw more fouls. The shot selection at times is still rocky for Ant, but it's leaps and bounds better than it was as a rookie. And he's also just generally more efficient in every situation. The pull-up field goal percentage as a rookie was also not good, but it was worse than it was this year. So he also improved in that area. And I want to point that out because that's the point of this discussion, is how much better he was as a sophomore in the NBA than he was as a rookie. Okay, let's transition to talking about defense, because I think it's undersold, and I've kind of said it in passing several times, going all the way back to really kind of the playoffs, when I was having, I started talking more and more about how, like, hey, Ant's defensive improvement is real. He's actually an above average on ball defender. And we started to see Chris Finch towards the end of the regular season and into the playoffs give Anthony Edwards the difficult defensive assignments, because Ant wants those assignments. That's his mentality. He has that bulldog mentality. He wants to guard the opposing team's best offensive player on the perimeter. He wants to do it if he can. And of course, the trick there is avoiding foul trouble, etc. But for the most part, Ant did a pretty good job of doing that. The second reason is because he has the physical tools to do it. He's massive. He's like 6'6" now. He's got the wingspan, the athleticism, the strength, the thickness, the build to be able to guard basically any 1, 2, or 3 in the league. The question was, does he have I know he wants the assignment. Will he stick to it on the court? Will he actually execute? And does he have the defensive wherewithal, I guess the defensive basketball IQ, if you will, for simplicity's sake, to do that? That was one of the questions coming out of the University of Georgia with Ant, is could he do this? Would he be able to lock in defensively and have an understanding of NBA offenses in order to be effective on defense? And I think the answer is clearly yes at this point. I mean, that's the only area where he still needs to improve some, because when he's on the ball, he's locked in and he's ready to go if it's a good assignment. Where we saw him lapse sometimes last year, or I should say a kind of a more glamorous assignment. Ant could get caught lapsing if he would gamble in passing lanes. He did that both as a rookie and last season. And then also late rotations or sloppy closeouts to players that, he's not as motivated to lock down. I don't know, just name a random, replacement level wing for any team in the league, except for if it's John Morant, he's going to lock in. If it's Paul George, he's going to lock in. If it's Luka Doncic and he gets the chance to guard him, he's going to lock in and play some defense. Can he maintain that focus for the majority of 82 games? I know nobody does it game in, game out, 48 minutes, 82 times a year, plus playoffs. I get that. But can he do it in those moments where it matters? Can he do it with consistency to give the Wolves the confidence that he is a top flight perimeter defender? Because he legit has the physical ability and has now demonstrated the capability of being a true two-way player at the NBA level. I want to dig into the metrics here and a couple of stats related to deflections and some things that suggest that he's also been really good off the ball here in just a second. But I think the biggest thing is the want to, the ability to guard on the ball. As a rookie, he was actually pretty good off the ball. His steal numbers were good. The steal percentage was good. I mentioned his other, advanced metrics, the rate-based stats were all up. His steal rate went up from his rookie year to his second year from 1.7 to 2%, which is significant because, again, if you're not familiar with these stats, that means that 2% of all opponent possessions while he's on the floor end in a steal. If a team averages, he was 1.5 steals per game. So opponents are averaging, nearly 100 possessions per game. I mean, if you just want to go straight per game numbers, the steals went up 1.1 to 1.5. So that's significant. The steal rate going up by 0.3%. The block rate also went up by 0.5%. A lot of that is the off-ball defense, the ability to recover, but also to help, to jump passing lanes, to get deflections, which we'll talk about in a moment, and also help side blocks. He did a little bit of that this year. The wherewithal, the defensive activity, it wasn't straight jumping passing lanes. He did some of that, and maybe once per game, he got the rotations out of whack, and the Wolves got burned because he gambled and missed. But as a rookie, that was at least twice a game, if not more, that was happening with Ant. So he's kind of, turning that down a half notch, being a little bit more judicious with his jumping to passing lanes, but also being really good with his rotations, with help side defense, with helping down at the rim. When he was in low man situations, he was generally pretty good. He does a fairly solid job of defending without fouling. So, all of those things are really impressive and encouraging when it comes to Anthony Edwards' defense and the amount of trust that Chris Finch showed in him as well. Let's talk about deflections next and why his role defensively is going to be so important this season. We'll do that here next to close the show. Last season, Anthony Edwards improved his deflections per game. This is according to NBA.com/stats from, as a rookie, 1.8 deflections per game to 2.5 deflections per game last year. That is 2/3 more a deflection per game. He was getting about half a steal more per game. Those things are obviously related on some level, but that improvement was significant. As a team, Jared Vanderbilt led the Timberwolves last season with 2.7 deflections per game. Ant was second with 2.5. Patrick Beverley was third with 2.4. Now, two of those three names are no longer with the team, both being traded to the Utah Jazz in the Rudy Gobert deal. So that leaves Ant as the highest remaining deflection player, deflection gatherer, deflection, I don't know, the highest player in racking up deflections on the team from last year, still on the roster. You go down the guys they added, Austin Rivers, not really his thing, certainly not Bryn Forbes' thing, not especially in the case of Forbes, not a big, super athletic player, not a great defender. Kyle Anderson, good in the deflections department. He actually averaged 2 per game last year. So if you look at the Wolves' current roster, he would immediately be second on the roster. He would have been fourth last year after Vando, Ant, Patrick Beverley. D'Angelo Russell, 1.9 per game with that big wingspan, spending a lot of time on the perimeter. He's actually, D'Lo's good with anticipation. He's always been a decent steals guy because of that length and that intelligence, that defensive wherewithal that D'Lo does have. It's always been more about effort and athletic ability with D'Lo. But all that to say, Kyle Anderson steps in and he immediately becomes the number 2 guy in terms of deflections per game. He's always had a good steal rate, and he's a good switchable defender. We talked about that. So Kyle Anderson is going to be vital to this team's defense with no Vando and no Patrick Beverley. However, the difference is the Wolves aren't going to rely as heavily on a blitzing high wall pick and roll scheme where they're running at you. They're trying to, crash Karl-Anthony Towns and Patrick Beverley into you and trap you on the perimeter. They're going to play more drop with Rudy Gobert, right? They're going to let Rudy Gobert, if you're not familiar with drop coverage, essentially Rudy's going to drop into the paint to a predetermined level to essentially allow the Timberwolves defense to contain the ball handler is the idea, and also make it difficult to hit a roller with a pass. It's easy to beat this if you have a point guard that can make pull-up jumpers from the mid-range. That's a fantastic passer. The Damian Lillard's actually D'Lo's really good against drop coverage. Kyrie Irving, those guys are all really deadly against drop coverage. Also, if they can shoot the 3, which obviously in the case of all those guys is a thing too. So dynamic point guards can shred drop coverage, but it also can help to contain, say, John Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. They're going to do more of that this year. So the deflections becomes a little less important because you're not going to be all out blitzing on the perimeter. That was how the Wolves had to play defense last year because Cat is not good in drop coverage. They wanted to make use of the length, athleticism of Vando, of Patrick Beverley, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, these guys that are longer rangy athletes that want to get to the perimeter and wreak havoc. They still need to do an element of that because they'll need to be able to switch their coverages. And also you just need guys that can generate turnovers and essentially free points in transition and easy possessions to score on the other end of the floor. So Kyle Anderson will be important to that. Anthony Edwards will be important to that. But Anthony Edwards, it's going to be extremely important for him to be able to be that lockdown perimeter defender. There's no Patrick Beverley. D'Lo needs to be solid. Jordan McLaughlin needs to be solid off the bench. Brent Forbes isn't a good defender. Jalen Wells not a good defender. I mean, he's got to step up, but he's not. He doesn't have the upside as a defender that Anthony Edwards does. Anthony Edwards is the lone plus perimeter backcourt player on this team sitting here right now. Jaden McDaniels is great. He can guard 1s and 2s. Okay. But he's not a backcourt player. He's a forward and a perimeter defender who will get a bunch of tough assignments. It's up to Anthony Edwards to provide resistance. Now, he will provide more resistance than, say, Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Bogdanovich, Mike Conley, old Mike Conley, the guys that have been trying to contain on the perimeter for the Jazz in the latter years of the Rudy Gobert and Utah era. But it's Anthony Edwards in the backcourt. It's Jaden McDaniels on the wing. It's Rudy Gobert in the front court. Those guys are all plus defenders. And obviously, Rudy Gobert is an otherworldly defender. If you can get average defense from D'Lo and Karl-Anthony Towns and, Kyle Anderson's he's an above average defender off the bench. Jalen's got to be competitive. Jalen Noel does off the bench. But Ant is the guy that's going to get those tough assignments. And if he can stay out of foul trouble, they're going to ask Austin Rivers, who's been a little bit up and down, but generally an okay defender throughout his career. He's going to need to come in off the bench. He's going to be he's the best defender of the Austin Rivers, Bryn Forbes, Jalen Noel trio. A couple of rookies, Wendell Moore, Josh Minott, in theory, should be good defenders, but they're not going to be in the regular rotation. Those are like guys 12 and 13 right now on the roster. So Anthony Edwards, there's a lot riding on his back defensively this year for the Wolves. I should point out, I've mentioned all the kind of the numbers around the edges here with Ant and just generally, he's obviously improved defensively. But I do want to point out that ESPN RPM, the real plus minus statistic, which I think it's the best. I've said this before. I think it's the best kind of all encompassing. If you're going to pick one number to try and who's better, obviously that's don't do that because it's not how this works. But if you needed to, if you had to pick one, ESPN RPM is probably my favorite. It does the methodology is really solid. It takes into account a number of it's a per 100 possession metric, which is super important. It also estimates the impact on winning that each player has. I don't think, it maybe overweights rebounding just a little. Bigs tend to have really good RPMs, but a lot of these stats do, right? Win shares obviously does that. Anyway, Anthony Edwards, as a rookie, had a defensive RPM of negative 0.92. So that was like 40th or so among small forwards in the league. This last year, it went up to 1.4. So that's an improvement of more than 2.5 points in RPM, which is significant. So again, for context, this year in defensive RPM, Ant was 22nd among players deemed as small forwards. Top of the list is Jason Tatum, Will Barton, which surprised me a little bit. Mikal Bridges, Scotty Barnes, Andrew Wiggins, guys who are legit good defensively this year. And then you get it, Jimmy Butler's 14th on this list. OG Anunoby's on the list. And then Ant is 22nd at 1.4. But it's not necessarily about that as much as it is the improvement from 45th, we'll call it, in the league as a rookie to 22nd this year. If he can climb another 5 to 10 spots going into the third season, that's an example of just how massive his improvement can be. And obviously that trickle effect on the rest of the team and the Wolves' overall defensive ability as a team will be absolutely significant. So Ant 100% improved significantly from rookie to sophomore season defensively, as well as he did offensively. And what will that jump look like this year? I mean, we saw flashes of true greatness on both ends of the floor from Ant last year. Can he improve everywhere this year? There's a lot of pressure. And again, being easily the best backcourt defender on this team now, moving into year 3, a player that came into the league with questions about his defense. That's a lot of pressure. Can Ant do that for a team that's expected now to be a top 4 or 5 team in the West and get to the second round of the playoffs? That's all we have for you today here on the show. We're back again next week, daily, once again, Monday through Friday. Of course, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. A reminder, you can make your second listen, the Locked On NBA show. You can get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes every single day with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily basketball update in just 30 minutes. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.